being together, being live in person, in body, that actually teaching, learning, connecting, speaking, sharing is more than just the words that someone speaks, more than just the words that you hear. That there's actually this energetic connection, transmission, exchange that we really took for granted. Because all the teaching, all the learning, all of that is happening. But that experience of that energetic connection is much, much harder. It's not impossible, because of course energy doesn't necessarily require physical proximity, but it's much, much harder to access. So it's so beautiful. It's such a gift to actually be able to be together. And it's my first time here at Unplug, and I love the name. I love the theory. I love the concept. And we have to ask ourselves, is it unplug, period? Or is it unplug, comma? Because the unplug part is obvious. What are we unplugging from? Well, we're unplugging from that which is pulling us, quite literally, out of the truth of who we are. Pulling us into distraction. Pulling us into this digital world. The bleeps, the bings, the rings, the vibration, the everything that's constantly grabbing our attention, grabbing our energy, grabbing our time. So we unplug from that. But I would suggest that it's unplug, comma, rather than unplug, period. Because once we unplug, then we actually need to reconnect. The unplugging is essential because you cannot simultaneously walk north and south at the same time. You cannot simultaneously turn left and right at the same time. We cannot simultaneously be fixated on the number of likes or comments on a Facebook post and simultaneously be mindful and attentive and aware and connected to and anchored in the expansiveness, the infinite expansiveness of who we are. So we unplug, comma, and then we reconnect. And that reconnection is essential because we are energetic beings. We are beings of divinity. In the Hindu tradition, in the Vedic tradition, we say that literally we are the divine. We are pervaded by the divine. In other traditions, I know we say we are children of the divine. In either way, it doesn't matter. Different traditions have different ways speaking about what turns out at a very high level to be the exact same concept. But in order to reconnect with the truth of who we are, we have to reconnect with that energy, of divinity, of perfection, of wholeness, of freedom. Because that's actually where our purpose, our light, our everything comes from. Think about, well, these are just beautiful candles. Okay, so this is an electric candle, right? That's a real one. This is an electric one. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful electrical candle. And somewhere in here is a battery. And some of them, instead of having batteries, they've got a wire and the wire plugs into the wall. But no matter how beautiful this candle were, no matter how fancy it might be, how elegant it might be, how absolutely exquisite it might be, if there's no battery in it, or the battery's dead, or it's one of those with a wire but it's not plugged in, it actually can't give us any light. So then its beauty, its exquisiteness ends up not being in service of its highest calling as a candle, which is to give us light. And so as we think about unplugging, let us also think about reconnecting. Because as beings, that connection is essential. My favorite joke on this is the joke of the man who goes to the doctor and he complains to the doctor that something is very wrong. He says, whatever I touch, it hurts. When I touch my head, it hurts. And I touch my stomach, it hurts. And I touch my back, it hurts. The doctor's surprised because usually people come in with one complaint. But this guy, everything was wrong. So after running, yeah, he knows the punchline already. So after running every test and every scan, he calls the guy back in and he says, the good news is there's nothing wrong with your head or your back or your stomach. The bad news is your finger is broken. And because your finger is broken, whatever you touch, it hurts. But it hurts not because of the outside things, but it hurts literally because of a broken connection in the bone of your finger. And I love this joke because we laugh. It's absurd to think that a guy would blame his head and his back and his stomach and be so confused when his finger needs to be in a splint. And yet, if we're really honest about our lives, it's actually what we do. Our lives hurt in so many ways. But we think the problem is outside. A relationship, a lack of a relationship, a job, a lack of a job, children, lack of children, something in our physical body, something in some way that the universe is interacting with us in a way that isn't how we want it to be. Which, by the way, is the very definition and foundation of stress. Simply that the universe is not behaving the way that I would like. Or I am afraid that in the future, the universe will not behave the way that I would like. So we blame that for the pain of the present, the fear of the pain in the future that's causing the stress and the pain in the moment. When actually the core problem is our connection is broken. We are literally not plugged in, not connected. And this is where this space is so beautiful because it gives us this opportunity to unplug, and reconnect. So it's not unplug into a vacuum. It's unplug from the falseness into the truth. There's a beautiful prayer that we chant in Sanskrit that says, Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma amritam gamaya. And it means lead us from falsehood to truth. Unplug me, quite literally, or help me to unplug myself from the identification with falsehood. This idea that I am this physical body, that I am my title, my career, my history, my race, my religion, my size, my shape, my bank account. Unplug me from that identification with falsehood and reconnect me to truth, that I am this infinite being of divinity, of love, of truth, of consciousness. Unplug me from the darkness in which I suffer and cause suffering to others, that darkness of ignorance, and reconnect me to the light of wisdom. Unplug me from this identification with this ever-changing body and reconnect me to the identification with the eternal soul, the eternal spirit. So that's what we have this beautiful opportunity to do tonight. And what I want to do, we've got just under an hour. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin with a meditation. And then I know the theme and the title is all connected with the launch of my book this week, Hollywood to the Himalayas, and we were just talking about that outside. So I'll share some of the physical arc of the adventure, the expansiveness, the lessons of that journey that I took, but more of the journey, that second arc that I was speaking about outside, that journey from one way of thinking, that Hollywood way of thinking that keeps us stuck, into a Himalayan way of thinking and living, which enables us to be free. And then we'll open it up for questions, because this is an experience together. Let us begin with just taking a few moments and allowing our eyes to close. It's the first step of unplugging. And as the eyes close, feel literally like a curtain. The eyelids are a curtain. And as they close, that curtain has dropped. From the world outside, with its drama, with its noise, with its constant fluctuations, and we dive into the world inside, which also, of course, has its own noise and its own drama. And as we dive into that inner world, we do so with no judgment at all. This is not psychoanalysis. We're not telling ourselves stories about the why and the when. We're not judging the thoughts that arise or the feeling state we are in. We are simply being aware. Allow that awareness to spread across your being like a beautiful soft blanket in the winter time that you pick up and you cover your body with. Imagine that awareness is this blanket that's just expanding and expanding into every corner, every nook and cranny of the physical body and the energetic body. Notice where there is tightness and constriction, and allow the blanket of the awareness just to flow there. Don't judge, but just allow that awareness to spread over and through all of the areas of the being. Carry it on your breath. So as you inhale, the awareness travels on the breath inside. And as the breath flows into every cell, that blanket of the awareness flows in to every cell of the being. And after that awareness has spread throughout the physical body, as you inhale and you breathe in this sacred prana, this sacred life force, energy of the universe, as you inhale, allow that prana to carry your awareness into the energetic body as well. Where does the energy flow freely and spaciously? And where does it seem tighter, restricted? And again, don't judge. Just bring the awareness to it. Allow that soft blanket of your awareness to just spread over and through all of the spaces where there's any tightness, any restriction. Feel the softness of that blanket, that expanding spread of your awareness. Feel it flowing through you. Now draw that awareness, draw that blanket of awareness just about 2 inches below your belly button. It's an energy center, a chakra, called the Swadhishthan Chakra. And Swadhishthan literally means the place of the self. Swa means self. Stan means place. So just about 2 inches beneath your navel, below your navel, is the Swadhishthan Chakra. Draw that awareness there. And as you inhale and exhale, take the breaths from that energy center. As you inhale, feel the petals of the lotus. Visualize that energy center as a lotus flower. And as you inhale, the petals of that lotus open wider and wider, expanding and expanding. And as you exhale, allow yourself to drop deeper and deeper into that seat of the self. expanding and opening from the Swadhishthan Chakra on each inhalation, as the petals of that lotus flower just expand and expand to that sacred life force of the energy. And then exhaling deeper and deeper, freer and freer of that which is not self. As you exhale and drop into the Swadhishthan Chakra, allow yourself to just let go. Let go of all of that which is not self. Let go of the drama. Let go of the identities. Let go of the personalities. Let go of the whole false self and allow yourself to sink deeper and deeper, freer and freer with each exhalation as you drop deeply into that seat of the self. You can add a simple mantra with this. On the inhalation, you can chant silently to yourself, so. And on the exhalations, you can chant silently to yourself, hum. So, hum. It means I am that. I am the universe. I am the creator and I am the creation. I am that. I am one with all. For the next few minutes, I want you to be sure to hold your physical body absolutely still. Don't fidget. Don't move. Just hold the physical body absolutely still for a few minutes. And notice as you breathe that on the inhalations you are breathing in from the outer world to the inner world. The inhalation carries the breath from outer to inner. And the exhalation carries the breath from inner to outer. Just notice that for a few minutes, still anchored in our Swadhishthan Chakra. Just become aware of this flow from outer to inner on the inhalations, and from inner to outer on the exhalations. But as you hold the physical body absolutely still, allow yourself to notice that slowly, slowly, that border between inner and outer dissolves. Allow that border to dissolve. So as you breathe now, again, the physical body must be absolutely still. As you breathe, notice the fluidity of that border and how you can actually get it to dissolve. So suddenly there is no outer and there is no inner. There is only breathing. As you breathe, it's just breathing of the self into the self. No outer, no inner, only breathing. ever so slowly, bring the palms of the hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly open the eyes and lower the hands. So today is actually a very beautiful holiday as well. It's in the Indian calendar. This month is the month of Shravan. And it's a month dedicated to the worship of Lord Shiva. And today is the Shivratri, the night of Shiva, of the month of Shravan. And I mention this because in what we refer to as the Trinity of the divine aspects, we have Brahma, who is that divine energy of creation. And we have Vishnu, who's the divine energy of sustenance. And then we have Shiva, who's that divine energy of disillusion. Sometimes we say destruction, but destruction implies that there's something negative, whereas this is a disillusion, a removal, a dissolving of that which needs to be dissolved. Because of course, it's not a trinity that's linear, it's cyclical. And so when Lord Shiva destroys or dissolves, it's in order to make room for Brahma to create. So it doesn't matter, of course, what your religion, your tradition, your spiritual beliefs are. None of it matters. In our universe, there are these three sacred energies, whatever we may call them, however we may identify them. There's a sacred energy of creation. Flowers blossom, apple seeds become apple trees, babies are born. And this is just, the universe is constantly creating. And there's an energy of sustenance, an energy that keeps us alive. The rain comes, it nourishes the fields, it nourishes our crops, nourishes our bodies and our lives, it sustains us. And then there's an energy of destruction, whether it's destruction of the physical body, an energy of death, leaves that go from green to brown and ultimately fall down. It's so that the power of creation then begins again. The leaf that goes from green to red to brown and ultimately falls gets packed under snow. That in the springtime, when the snow melts, those leaves have become the fertile soil that the blossoms of springtime blossom in. So when we speak about Shiva, and today, because it's this very, very, very sacred day of that energy, that Shravan Shivratri, this sacred night dedicated to this energy, it's a beautiful time to ask ourselves, what in me needs to be dissolved? What is it I need to be cleared of, unplugged from, literally, in order for my true internal connection creation to happen. And we're all held back. We're held back in many ways by the way we think, the way we live, things that have happened to us, the grudges we hold, the identities that we form. And so as I share about my journey, it's really been a journey of letting go. I didn't know that was what it was going to be. But as I look back upon the last 25 years, it's really been this journey of that energy of Shiva coming through and sweeping through. For me, the energy came in the form of the river Ganga, who, by the way, just in terms of the spiritual history of Ganga, she literally comes onto earth through the hair of Lord Shiva. So their energies are very intertwined. And she literally, it felt like that energy of Ganga swept through me and cleared me of that which was holding me back. And so when I speak about Hollywood to the Himalayas, yes, physically, I grew up here in Studio City, in fact. So literal Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills. Traveled to the Himalayas via Palo Alto. I graduated from Stanford. I was in the midst of doing a PhD in psychology. And traveled physically to India at the age of 25 with a backpack. Not on a spiritual quest, or not on any kind of a conscious spiritual quest. But I went, as I was sharing with you outside, because I was a vegetarian, and so agreed to go to India because I knew that at least I could eat happily. And it's important because a lot of times in life when we make decisions, we expect that somehow it's going to feel huge, that somehow there's going to be this like thunder and then lightning and the universe is going to open up and our decision is just going to come down in this divine form in, right in front of us, and we're just going to know. And for me, it literally was like, all right, you want to go to India? Okay, I guess I'll go. Well, at least I'll be able to eat happily. I mean, it was like that. There was no sky opening up. There was no major message in the universe that came in front of me. And so as you live your lives, don't pass up the beautiful way that the universe speaks to you. Just because it doesn't necessarily come with fireworks or a volcano, or in something that's got your dharma or your purpose, stamped right on it in a way that you can see. And we get to India, and I'm gonna fast forward through this. All of the fun stories, the adventurous stories, the funny stories, it's all there in the book. But I'm gonna fast forward through it now, just because we have less time than you have to actually dive into reading a full book. We arrive in Rishikesh, which was the first place we went. And I stood on the banks of this river that I didn't even know was sacred. And I was given this extraordinary spiritual experience of oneness, of perfection, of awakening, of transformation, of God, of divinity, both outside of me as well as inside of me, as well as the awareness that there was no outside, there was no inside. It just was all God. And it just was so beautiful. And all I could do was cry. And the only words that would come out of my mouth were, oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I knew that that was where I was meant to stay. And over the next 7 to 10 days, there were again a series of these beautiful stories that happened where literally I heard voices telling me to stay in the ashram where I now live. But of course, I was a scientist. I was not a mystic. I was not someone who heard voices. The only people in my worldview who heard voices were schizophrenics other than Joan of Arc. And since I was pretty sure I wasn't Joan of Arc and I really hoped I wasn't schizophrenic, I ignored it until I heard it again. And then at a point, many days later, after I had finally met my guru, I thought I was going to walk right out of the ashram. He had told me I could stay there, and I was prepared. We were heading to the mountains on a further adventure. And I thought, well, I'll stay when we come back. And my feet literally got glued to the ground. I literally couldn't walk out of the ashram. It was as though there was crazy glue or quicksand. And I'll leave you to read the whole manifestation of that really fun story in the book. But I shared just the overview of this because there is an intelligence in the universe that is guiding us. And it may not guide you to live in an ashram in India. And it may not guide you to take vows of celibacy and to become a spiritual renunciant. But that intelligence is there. It speaks every language. It's present everywhere. And it speaks to all of us in different ways. But it's there for all of us. And for me, one of the greatest lessons and teachings has been to first hear that voice, to create enough space and stillness and quietness to even be able to hear it. Then to be able to listen to it, because once you start hearing, what you hear is actually, I would say, a symphony if they played together, but they don't play together. So it sounds much more like a bunch of kindergartners on steroids with pots and pans in your brain talking to you at the same time. So you create this space to hear, and what you hear is kindergartners on steroids with pots and pans. And it's the voice of fear, and it's the voice of ego, and it's the voice of your 5th grade teacher telling you that you were worthless and stupid and you'll never be anything. And it's the voice of every billboard you see telling you that, you're too fat and you're too old and you're too ugly and you're too this and you're too that. And it's every other voice that we've internalized in our lives, the voices of our parents, telling us that, we're good, we're worthy of love when our room is clean and we bring home straight A's. And we're bad. Or maybe we're just not good, depending on what their vocabulary was. When our room's a mess, or we don't bring home straight A's, or we leave our jacket at school, or whatever we may have done. We carry these voices. So first you have to be able to hear, then you have to be able to listen to which is that actual voice within. And then you have to be able to trust it. And that, for me, that 3-stage path, although frequently they come at the same time, has been one of the greatest lessons that I've learned on this journey. Because when I went to India at 25, I couldn't hear, I didn't listen, I didn't trust. I had experienced, in the midst of great privilege, great opportunity, great blessings, I had also experienced great suffering and trauma. I had been through a lot of very difficult experiences in my early childhood. And as I got into adolescence in my 20s, I did what so many of us do when we're struggling with thoughts and feelings within us that we know are not right. It doesn't feel right. Is we have this very well-intentioned urge to no longer feel that, to not be in that state of pain and suffering and stress and conflict. And so we turn to something that we think will get us out of that. And it may be drugs, it may be alcohol, it may be food, it may be sex, it may be shopping, whatever it may be. We turn to something. And I mention that it's well-intentioned purposely because addiction, soft addiction, hard addiction, addiction is actually a spiritual yearning. It is a knowledge within us that this experience I am having in my mind, in my heart, in my body is not right. I need something else. I deserve something else. I should have something else. This isn't right. And that's a spiritual yearning. That's what has sent people to the mountains and caves to meditate for thousands of years. The dilemma is that neither alcohol, nor drugs, nor food, nor sex, nor Facebook, nor any of these things, nor shopping actually works. If it worked, we wouldn't need to be here. We could just, order a bunch of chocolate cakes and be done. But it doesn't actually work. It just makes us more stuck. But that's where I was in my life at 25. Was on the outside, everything was fantastic. I had it all. But on the inside, I suffered, and I didn't trust. I didn't trust my own voice. I didn't trust the universe. I didn't trust anything. And I couldn't listen. Because the minute I tried to even hear, the minute I tried to create enough quietness, the internal stuff was so much that I couldn't actually sit. So that was the end of any practice. I used to cry in Shavasana all the time. And I took yoga, and he'd put us in Shavasana. I would just sob in Shavasana, just the quietness of Shavasana would make me cry. And what I was given in India was a beautiful teaching of letting go. And I was instructed, literally, to stand in the water of Ganga and to give my pain to the river. But prior to that instruction, I was asked when I shared my pain, because I had asked a question. It was a session like this, except in those sessions, after people asked their question, they would leave. So it would begin with a room full of people like this, and then one by one, people would come up, or in pairs or a family, and they would ask, and then they would go and ask and go. And I was left as the last one, and I asked a question about fear. And my guru told me, you fear because you don't trust. And I then gave him my story. Here's why I don't trust. Here's what's happened to me. And he looks at me and he says, are you going to take that to the grave? I was 25. I was like, no. And I was getting my PhD in psychology, by the way. So I said, no, of course not. And he said, so are you going to give it up on your deathbed? How about a week before you die? Maybe a month before you die? And I was like, what is he trying to tell me? Am I going to die soon? And I said, no. And he said, I said, I'm I'm in therapy, or I'm in process. I'm, going through it. I'm learning to manage it. And he looked at me and he said, you're waiting for someone to draw the line. You're waiting for someone to come in and say, now you can be done. Now you are okay. You are healed. You are done. He said, no one will. It's up to you. You can carry it to your grave. You can give it up a month before you die. Or you can give it up tonight. I was like, tonight? He said, yeah. We have this beautiful ceremony on the banks of the river with fire, and I want you to offer the fire. And then I want you to stand in the river, and I want you to take all of your pain and offer it to the river. And as embarrassing as it is 25 years later to admit this, I spent the next several hours kind of making fun of that in my mind. And I used to keep a journal, and I've got entries in my journal that say things like, just give it to the river, as though it were an apple core, rather than the pain and the trauma and the struggles that I had been through. And somewhere, just kind of late afternoon, early evening, I had a moment that I will always be so deeply grateful for. And it was a moment where I said to myself, okay, just commit to doing it sincerely. Obviously, it's not going to work. Obviously, rivers don't sweep away people's pain. Obviously, this is completely nonsensical. Obviously, thankfully, you come from this world where we understand process and where, you're in therapy and we know, what you're going to do for the next 5-10 years of your life, several days a week. And, luckily you've got all of that and you don't have to rely on a river to sweep away your pain. But do it sincerely. It has been asked of you by a being who is revered as an incarnation of the divine here on earth. It's been asked of you by a being in whose presence you feel more connected to love, to divinity than in any presence you've ever been. Just do it sincerely. Who knows? Maybe this is why you came to India. And it worked. Now, I share the story with you, and there's more to the story, of course. That was the abridged version, but I share it with you not because I'm suggesting that you go stand in a river and that it's just going to sweep away your pain, but to share the possibility that every one of us has in actually not just managing our pain, not managing our addictions, not managing our stress, not managing our suffering, not managing these false identities, but actually being free of them. And so that arc of Hollywood to the Himalayas was, yes, a physical arc full of lots of great stories, of great learning, of great teaching, of being, a white 25-year-old privileged woman in, with a backpack, into being a 50-year-old celibate, renunciant, spiritual leader who's lived there for 25 years. That arc of that incredible transformation, which is, of course, fascinating and exciting, and it's an adventure, and it's a beautiful insight into the spiritual world of India and so many of the teachings and concepts there, and our own package deals of life walks you through celibacy into, child rearing, menopause, the whole, or child non-rearing rather, into that whole cycle of that arc of our life. But the other arc is this arc of our way of thinking. And that's an arc that regardless of when or if you actually come to India, is an arc that every one of you can have, which is how we identify and think. From identifying as these physical beings, as our stories, as our drama, as our limitations, to identifying as actually the truth of who we are, which is spirit and soul and consciousness and love. And by the way, that is why being in love feels so good. Whether it's with another human being, whether it's with a pet, whether it's with a tree, whether it's, whether it's romantic love, whether it's love for your grandmother, your grandchild, doesn't matter. But it's why loving feels so good, because when we love, we are in touch with the truth of who we are, which is expansion. When we love, we go from being separate. We go from I to we. And even that act of I to we is an expansion. And ultimately, that expansion is a path to the ultimate expansion, which is not just with this one being or this one animal or this one tree, but actually into expansion with oneness, with all. And that's the arc that all of us can take. But in order to do it, we have to let go. And that's why it's so beautiful that I'm here tonight on this sacred day of the Shivratri of Shravan month, where the theme of Shiva is dissolve, 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 let it go, let it go. That which is not suiting you, that which is holding you back, that which is keeping you stuck, let it go. And my favorite story on this is the story of the city in India where they were overrun with monkeys. And of course, India is a non-violent place, so they're not going to shoot them or poison them. And so they developed this technique where they took coconuts and they hollowed out the coconut. And inside the coconut, they stuck a fruit or a sweet, something that monkeys love. But the whole of the coconut, they made it just big enough for an empty hand to go in, but too small for a closed fist to come out, thinking that this will trap the monkeys. Now, when I first heard this story, I was like, well, that's not a very good trap, because monkeys are our, closest DNA relative. Of course, they're going to be intelligent enough to just open their fist and pull their hand out. But they never did. And it became this perfect monkey trapping device, because if you've got 4 legs and one of them is stuck in a coconut, well, you can't run, you can't climb trees, you can't do anything. And so they became very, very easy for these monkey catchers to just catch them and take them back to the jungles. And here's what's so great about the story. They are our closest DNA relatives. And you'd think, really? It didn't realize after not just minutes, but hours, maybe days in some cases, before the monkey catcher found it, that this sweet that it had closed its fist around was actually going to lead to its downfall. That no matter how juicy it seemed or how succulent it seemed or sweet it may have seemed, that actually this was the thing going to lead to its downfall. But it never let go. And so these monkeys just got picked up and taken back into the jungles. Fantastic as far as a monkey catching technique goes, but a really sad statement on how we live. Because if you think about it, you realize we all do that. There's things in our lives. It may be an expectation that we have of a loved one, how they're going to act, how they're going to be, whether in their life, whether in how they are with us. Maybe an expectation we have of how the universe should be. A concept of justice that we have, rightness that we have, that when things don't go according to that, we're stuck. The universe should have known better. Maybe it's something from our past, an anger, a pain, a grudge that we're holding on to, that's keeping us from really being able to step up in our lives to that plate of our own life. Say, yes, universe, I'm here. Yes, yes to the universe. Things hold us back from that. We think, I can't say yes because I am this, or because this happened. So that holds us back. Our patterns of thought, patterns of identification, judgment, negativity, habits we have, just little habits we have. We get together, we gossip, we're negative. We spoil the energy in the space. We nitpick at each other, we nag, we criticize. We ruin the energy in the space. And it keeps us in every moment from actually being able to live as the love, as the truth that we are. So, if you take home something from tonight, I hope you'll take home the question, what is my fist around? What have I closed my fist around in my life that I think is actually the answer to that which I want? It's going to be the beautiful, sweet fruit. It's going to be juicy. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to fill me. It's going to satisfy me. That I think is the answer, and actually has become that which makes me stuck. And as you become aware of that, just allow yourself to unclench that fist. Just to see what it's like. I mean, you can always stick your hand back in. When the coconut's not going anywhere. Just see what it's like. Just unclench your fist, let go. You can always, don't worry, your neuroses, your issues, they will always be available should you want to grab onto them. But the question is why? But just you don't have to tell yourself I'm getting free forever. Because then of course the ego is like, no, what about me? Just for some time, a day, 2 days, like what would it look like if I let go of this temporarily? What would it look like if I just unclenched my fist around this idea, this concept, this memory, this grudge, this expectation, this attachment momentarily? Is there a spaciousness into which I can flow? And the answer that I found is yes, there is. And it's healed and it's transformed me. And I've seen it heal and transform so many others. So it's what I offer to you this evening. We've gone a bit over time, but I am happy to take a question or two. If anyone has one that they feel like, if I don't get this, I'm not going to feel yes.
My question's in regards to letting go. You had a couple of metaphors in your story about, I just went to the river and it was just, the river took my pain. And then you also said about the monkeys, like just the fist, like just let go. But in those instances where it's not, do you think it's that easy? Do you think it's just in one moment you can just let go of like years worth of trauma and pain?
Beautiful. So first of all, it's important to understand the distinction between easy and simple. It is not easy. Not easy. Not easy by any means. And the river, by the way, did not reach in and grab it from me. I had to actually give it. I was giving the story quickly. It's in more detail in the book, but in the interest of time, I was trying to just get to the core of it. But there was a very long period of time of me standing in the river, literally pulling forth from me all of the pain and very consciously offering it and saying, please take it. Now, again, I didn't think it was going to work. I had only committed to doing it sincerely. And I did. And I cried a lot. And I stood there for what felt like forever. And eventually I was able to let it go. So there is a distinction between easy and simple. A lot of these spiritual teachings are very, very simple. That does not make them easy by any means. In order to let go of it, you have to be ready to let it go, which means that you have to ask yourself, is it serving me? That's really the issue. There are, of course, neural patterns, and it will take a little while to get that, a new neural pattern. That's where the power of things like ritual come in. Rituals have this ability to sort of reach us on a level of brain waves that's much more like hypnosis, which is why we find that in rituals or in meditation, we're able to make shifts that we're not necessarily always able to make with our conscious mind, because it does take us into a different brainwave pattern where we're more able to access the subconscious. But what's critical is you asking yourself, am I ready to let it go? And a lot of us think, yeah, sure, like why not? Why would I walk around with trauma? But you know what? It serves us. It served me. The story served me a lot, because anyone who knew the story was never going to say to me, and why exactly don't you get your act together? And why exactly can't you eat a normal meal like a normal person? Why can't you be like this in relationship? Why can't you think like this, act like this, be free like this? It was an amazing out. Oh, well, you see, I can't because here's my story. And then everybody my whole life had always said, oh my God, you poor thing. The fact that you managed to get out of bed every day is just so fantastic. Like how could we possibly ask anything more of you? So it's a great out. You want to not be open and vulnerable and scared in relationship. You want to not really feel. I don't just mean the pain, because with trauma we do feel pain. But we feel the pain in a way where it's a story. And I felt, for me, I'll share it with you because it may resonate with you. After I had given it, I was trying to look for it. I kept literally trying to look for it because I thought, well, there's no way it's gone. And what I found was that I felt like there was this part of me that felt like this out of work actor standing on a street corner, shouting its lines, unaware that like the curtain had fallen, the show was over, it had packed up and had gone on to the next city. Like this actor who had played a role that he was so, or she was so identified with, couldn't actually accept the fact that the show was over, and so literally was still there, kind of standing on the street corner, like reciting his lines for whoever would listen. And it started to really feel that pain. And those lines, of course, are the pain. That recitation is, oh my God, this, oh my God, that. That's my story. That's the pain. And I go into it. But if you're really honest, and if you're like me, that story has become the lines of an out-of-work actor. It's no longer the truth of the moment. It was true. There was a time the actor was employed and was the star of the show, where that pain was real in the moment. It was up in the moment. It was the truth of the moment. But when we carry it on, we're carrying yesterday's story, yesterday's drama into today. And we become like those out-of-work actors. But in order to let it go, you've got to then be prepared to dive into, well, who will I be? Like if I'm not the one who was Hamlet, right? The actor formerly known as Hamlet, right? I mean, if I wasn't that, who am I? Who is this being on a street corner if I'm not reciting my lines? And that's really scary. It's really scary to drop into that. And that's where the trust comes in. And what I would say to you is, at some point in your life, I imagine you've done one of those trust falls in school and some, team building exercise. And a lot of times the person who has to catch you, it's always interesting how it works out that way, tends to be maybe not your best friend, maybe someone you've had some issues with, maybe a competitor, maybe. And yet, we always do it. We know, regardless of whether they are someone who's bullying me on the playground or my competitor at work, they're not going to let me fall. And what I would say to you is, the universe is not going to let you fall. But you've got to do that trust dive into the universe.
So like when your fist is holding on to something, it's not about just letting go, it's about trusting.
It's about trusting. It's about trusting, in fact, that as you let go, it feels like this vast void of empty space. But actually the truth is your hand is being held. But you can't feel it's being held when you've got the fist. You've got to let go in order to know that you're actually being held. And that's where the spiritual connection is so powerful. And again, it doesn't matter what it is. But if you've got a spiritual practice, great. If not, go and lie in the dirt underneath the trees. Mother Earth will hold you. Mother Earth will sustain you. Mother Earth is carrying you. As she carries and sustains and holds every tree, every flower. And just let go into her. Or float in the ocean. Give yourself an actual experience of letting go into either a spiritual practice or into nature. Lie on the sand and feel the sun. And just feel that earth, feel that universe support you. And know that you can let go. And you can be free. And you may stand up from that sand or that dirt having no idea who you are. And that's beautiful. And just the one part you do know is your soul, your spirit, your divinity, your love, because that is what we all are. and just move forth with that. And again, not easy. Simple, but not easy. But what I would tell you is, it's the only way. The other is a jail. It is a jail. And your highest possibility is not simply managing your pain. You actually can be free of it when you recognize that you are not the one. You are not the one to whom the trauma happened. It happened. But you today, the cells of your being today, are not the cells to which that happened. We're simply carrying the lines of an out-of-work actor because we've memorized them so well into today, and we're reciting the lines and we're going through the drama. But it's not the truth of the moment anymore. Yeah. And surround yourself, by the way, with people who will mirror and hold and support that for you. Especially in the beginning. Because being re-identified as the one makes it a lot harder. Surround yourself with people who can contain the unfolding of who you are, who isn't that story of the out-of-work actor. And give yourself, to the extent possible, a break from those who have their own agendas wrapped up with your story and who need you to stay stuck in order for them to be able to manage their own stories. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening. And a beautiful arc of your own. Of this shift of Hollywood to the Himalayas. And I look forward, really forward, to hearing your thoughts, your feedback when you read the book on how you're able to unfold along with it. What parts speak to you the most? Obviously where you laughed, where you cried, but also what parts mirror where you're unfolding. Because that was why I wrote it. Was for you all.